Okay, I don't have a microphone on, but I'm just going to sit here and go through my notes and record it and see if there's something that I can get to. This is for generating research for my MFA. Originally started off and I was thinking, I don't know, I could flesh out a video to talk about steps and my experience, the intersection, I am the nexus. Or I can just look at a single move. These are the things people ask me. I go through the archivals, my archivals, the outcome and the process. As a black belt, we want to play with it. I've decided to ditch drag and gender because that can come at an end state in a larger project. But how it informs and embodies and how you infuse it, this is the narrative. It is a functional militaristic art, and all of the historical context is from that point of view. But where is the art in it? Can I pull apart the moves and look at it from more of an artistic practice than a functional practice, thereby making it bigger than it is and bringing it into the 21st century? So I guess it started because I said, oh look, if you can't dance, just do some taekwondo moves on the dance floor. People wouldn't even know. They'd think you were dancing. And then that was the first concept of it. Then I heard about this competition for creative patterns. Really, it was just taekwondo to music. I didn't think it was that creative at all, although there is space for it. So what I'm going to do is look at, if we really do decide to do a creative pattern and we break down the moves of taekwondo and use some of the moves of taekwondo and then add some of our own, and I mean there's going to be a bias here because it's taste. And eventually we can think about gender and identity and costume and drag king side of it. But until then, a no. I'm just going to think of it in terms of this. My matter of concern is there's this beautiful functional art that's doing this, but it could do this. So I'm going to look at some of the key concepts and the rules of Taekwondo. I'm going to talk about what I'm going to uphold, what I'm not going to uphold. I'm going to kind of move feminism, gender identity, drag over here for a bit. And that will, one day inform some further research. But it's really about reimagining Taekwondo as an aesthetic art. There are multiple elements in it. So I'm going to talk about like the socio-political, cultural, historical movement, narrative and masculine. I'm going to look at the evolution of it. And then I'm going to say, hey, if we really did create a pattern, then how do we assess the worth of this pattern? I mean, they would all be worthy and they would all be art. It might not be a good art, but we'll look at it like that anyway. So it started by General Choi in the army, but from one positionality. So what was lost or missing because of this one positionality? So then I go, well, can I put it from a feminist point of view, post 1955? Who was practicing it in a female version before it, and can we reclaim it? So really it is about an advanced, civilized, contemporary update. It's just going to be an experiment. And actually it could just be one experiment in a series of many experiments. So effectively, I'm going to give everybody permission to do this. Not necessarily the creator of a pattern, but this is the creator of a genre. It is the art of hand and foot. So it has a narrative. Did the narrative start and then follow the pattern, or was it the other way around? Was it logo-centric? I'm not sure. But what do I want to say? Well, the narrative will tell a story, but it's going to be minimal because it is a physical practice. So maybe it's just about coming up with a concept moving through it, the narrative comes from that, and then they inform each other back and forth in a circular kind of motion. So then, do I give it to non-Taekwondo people? So if I think about exploring it further to gender and drag or as a practice for actors, for embodiment, for physicality, to inform thought, how do I figure it out? Because non-Taekwondo practitioners won't know the moves. And then Taekwondo practitioners, well, the new moves could become part of a new genre. But we're going to look at the belts and the points of focus. We're going to let go of our shackles. I'm going to figure out who my audience is. What's their connection to Taekwondo or even movement? There could be various versions of this. So I might come up with bridging moves between Taekwondo moves, and then it invests these moves with far more meaning and then starts to reveal layers. The way I'm going to express it is 1,500 words, and I'm going to talk about how I understand it, try and provide scholarly support, the theory of power, historical rules, socio, etc., and the narrative, and then talk about acting theory. And then I might go, well, here's my rubric for how I'm going to do this, so that I've got, some imposed rules, so that I'm not just doing a free-for-all. And then I was thinking phenomenological writing, but more than that, phenomenological speaking, so that it will have academic rigor, and there might be some scholarship and references, but it's more about the sensorial perspective. Because a lot of these moves, the artistic side of them have been overlooked. So that's what I want to talk about, which is my third part, is how I'm going to flip, distort, playful, and then see what happens there. In class, we were given a magic if, a magic wand, or what if, broader appeal. We're going to justify the form. There's going to look at our future symposium. Is it going to be a further research project? Is it going to be a podcast? And I also need a research question. There's the stars and wishes, the silent gallery, layered feedback and prompts. And I was given, some half decent questions. I might start with the narrative go. Once upon a time, I entered a competition and won a silver medal. Why did I win a silver medal? Because people hadn't seen it. They liked it and they thought it was good, but they didn't know what the heck it was about. Plus, I've also used components of martial arts in drag, and then I also put in components of dance in Taekwondo. So there we go. And there's also this concept of having a clean space to generate questions, to workshop a feedback loop, ask questions. Stay curious, lots of things here. I'm not sure how to present it. Maybe this video and just be snippets of it. Maybe I can ask people to think, my process was this and this is what we will do. But do people who I don't know want to participate in this form? I don't know. This is going to be presented at the main. It's worth 20%. The other one's worth 30%. And I'm going to what's my form and our topic and our theme. We're going to connect some points, make it concrete. What's our resonance and our abstract? Is there a through line? Spatial relationships, chronological narrative, what forms will we explore, what's our budget, who to invite, the timelines. I really have no idea about any of that. Is somebody going to have a lecture in an image? There might be some interactivity. Somebody said a panel discussion and resources and a listening booth. I really fucking have no idea, actually. It's very confusing. Well, there was going to be a dinner party, but now it's just a day party. I don't know. How do I tell my story? How do I share a snippet? Do I give them questions and they answer it? Then I had a chat with the head of NIDA, head of movement at NIDA, Gavin, when the body becomes all eyes, Kala Payati Zarili, which I've looked at. Then the Dictionary of Theatre Anthropology, The Secret Art of the Performer, which is Eugene Barber. And then Holism, The Paper Canoe, and the Ancient Martial Art of Kerala. So then I talked about that. Then something about 30-second jingles with rhythm and couplets. I don't even know why I wrote this down. Oh, because I was talking to Gavin. The musicality, the rhythm, the breath, the acting, and I don't know what this says. Training. Then our timeline for this symposium is February the 21, which is our meeting tomorrow. And then we're going to have content, who to invite, hand our essays in, finalise everything, and then we present. We really have no idea. Then we talked about the international placement. But in terms of this, 70 years it hasn't changed. It's about Taekwondo, competition, dance, narrative, art, creative practice. We're going to unpack it, getting rid of drag and gender, look at it as an aesthetic expression. Distinguish, conflate, construct, deviate, pinnacle, smorgasbord, opportunity, music, compose, new creative world championship, a matrix of rubrics. What's the undercurrent of taste? What are the parameters? Real versus Mickey Mouse, Eva Oddly and La Stranger. There's 25% in each of our rubrics, and we're looking at heritage, lineage, tradition, resonance, historical practice and knowledge, and then beauty, and then practical, functional, self-defense, lethality, then also costume, different bodies, music, sine wave, power. We're going to flesh it out. I'm going to even look at the rubric for this and see what I can take from there, because the research is of us and from us. I'm going to use all of these questions I was given and look at the syllabus. What findings, insights, are they embodied? It's a true beauty practice. Flip it. Martial arts, my martial arts predates drag. I've got permission to do this. It's about control and breath and timing and synthesis. It's energized and slow. I would open in a slow, hard, fast movement, a pure and absolute. And so then I would start with a new one, so that an old one, so that there's a commonality and we don't isolate. I would also say that it's multi-directional, so I could turn around, which would be nice, and unexpected. Where I usually finish on the point, so that's when I need to look up the rules. I'm going to break it up, stance, level, size, spatial awareness. So then we can prosecute through gender or new forms. Including non-binary, play the rules, different, support a through line. I have to write the narrative, because how could you not? Wow. The theory, you learn, inform, shape. It's that actor theory, the intersection, character, wanting, relationships, explicit, influence, champions. A minute pattern, how I did it, why did I name it that, what did I focus on, did I choose to uphold the rules or get rid of the rules, and what does that say about the practice? What about the narrative? Do I lean into it? What do I explore? What do I look at? Is the knowledge of the narrative will inform a practice and the movement in performance. A new move, a new pattern, it's original. I have to have a dramaturgy that serves the pattern and the narrative. I need to look that up. They're connected to the moves in isolation. So one move, so why, I want to be able to have why a single move, why does it have multiple elements, link it up. That's my expert insight. The practice can be enriched by making these moves speak to one another. And I'm going to show you how I did it in this new pattern. Historically, the narrative was all about Korean men, so where were the women? And then I talked about the warrior. So what's the historical context? Who wrote them? The positionality. And why then? And what was lost by the patterns by only coming from this form created by one person? Hopefully someone else has done that research so that I can look at it, just touch on it. But I could go like, what evidence? That there is evidence of female practitioners prior to that, so what was lost? and how do we reclaim the practice, right? Or this practice is initiated in its current form by a man, and these patterns didn't represent female physicality. So we're going to reflect on that and its evolution and try to update them, because when you do them, you might feel different when you try it on. But we are going to try and remove the gender. We already know that they're empowering, as Cholet says, and put this line of inquiry in it and a quote. So what is it going to feel like to update these from a positionality of somebody who's a different gender, different part of the world, and different life experiences? People aren't always comfortable in the masculine, or what? It's just performance. It's all drag and performance anyway. So what does updating it look like? Have the bodies changed? Is there a contemporary response? My desire to make it more interrelated, and why do I want to do that? What about the narrative and what I have to say? Is the place of Taekwondo in the 21st century in advanced society? We just look at gendered violence in Ballarat. Of course it is. We need it, but we shouldn't. So what about if this is going to be an experiment, the first experiment of experiments that I hope will last for years in practice. Because we know it's not just functional, but it's artistic, and we can lean into that. How do we contemporize it? We create our own multiple dimensions and include a rubric and have an Australian one. I don't have to come up with the answers. I'm not really creating the patterns as such. I'm creating a new genre. I'm acting as instructor, making space for others to create it. I'm giving people permission to create their own toll, because they deserve the opportunity to express themselves in this way. How would I instruct them or help them or support them to do this? I'm going to have a rubric, and we're going to have a look at it. So if somebody wants to explore gender violence or aesthetic practice or breaking free from a small town, the narrative, it can be beautiful and value, create space for everyone to tell their kind of stories within a practice that is rich for exploration. So I would say take a minute, have a look at your pre-existing patterns, use real rules, 3 moves, have a narrative, see what you can use, and then does it come from a movement? Here I'm thinking concept first. How does it make you feel? Physically write down. Does it help you tell a story? Apply some rules. It can be pedestrian, follow your instinct and your intuition, and have a through line that's recognizable, like your original moves, and it makes your moves become recognizable in this new genre, like think about skateboarding. So do we start physically or the narrative? Is it logocentric or cerebral of the head, or is it in our bodies? Do we overlay the narrative on top? I think in terms of devising, we usually start with the physical, but this way, what I think I'll start with is just a concept. Then we can explore some physical actions that support that concept. Then we can start to write the narrative, a fable, try some more actions and physicality, and then the narrative and the physicality can change accordingly. And I'll find a reference to scholarship that supports that from some physical theatre devising world. We can break the rules intentionally. We can also honour these different moves and Taekwondo on comment on what I just did. So the physical practice, we'll get on the feet and on the floor and we'll move it. We'll physically respond before we all talk. You're going to have 3 points of focus for creative physical exploration. So with me in the room, we're going to physically respond to 2 prompts: sophisticated wonder, empower for permission. The ITF, there's a lot of rules. There's going to be a hidden taste. This is my rubric, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to make a pattern, and then we're going to think about why we thought about it that way and what we did, and what rules did we break, and what was the narrative, and how did we name it. And we're going to keep creating space for others to do this. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to talk about the rules and the history, the positionality, who created it, naming traditions, describe the practice I did, and then I'm going to unpack it with reference to a researcher and why I did these things and why I upheld these rules and broke these rules and how come I named it like that and why it's interrelated and how I think it adds to the practice further, this artistic form in the 21st century. And I'm also going to consider who's my audience. Is it current martial artists? Is it actors as practitioners? Is it for people who are thugs, for young and new to explore? I don't know, because there's a world of difference, and then we can connect all of these people who do individual Taekwondo for in their own individual context, and they can come together and they can showcase this new art form, and we can all appreciate the artistry and maybe even learn a new self-defense move. So there's different versions of it. One may be traditional, and this is what it looks like. And then here's the bridge that ties the traditional to the traditional in a contemporary way, and this is the relationship with this other move. It normally looks like that and it wouldn't be associated here, but now doing it in this manner, and when you do it together in connection to this narrative, you invest this practice with a new meaning. There are different levels. We can reveal different things. And that's for future, and it is a much larger project. But until then, I'm going to do a rubric, historical, cultural origins, where, who, the influence, some rules, unpack some rules, how it's supported, talk about the narrative, how does that inform it, maybe talk acting theory of how that also does it. Then I'll go into photos and new patterns, and here's a breakdown and 5 key points of movement interrelatability, how I cultured it, the narrative, the rules I'm working with, maybe just 300 words to reference the scholarship of phenomenological writing, to explain how I did it in also the autoethnographic way, and then why I've come up with it, which really is my so what. And then in this section, why I did what I did, and I did this particular move, and it's historically been done like this, and it's been upheld these particular rules because of X, Y, Z, but I choose to flip and break and distort. And I think that by doing so, I update it to the 21st century for a female body, for the mere practical beauty of it. My individual reason is valid. And it could just be to showcase these gestures have been overlooked. So it's your own story in your own space. And then about the interplay of structure and freedom. So we're not going to throw gender and drag and identity out, but this is going to come later. It can expand exponentially there for context, for gender, and for actors. This is just our blueprint. So it would be like 2 minutes, 6 rules, 1 narrative, 2-to-1 ratio, off you go. So I'm going to choose a narrative, but I'm going to explain why I chose it, and it really doesn't matter. As long as I know what I know and I know that I don't know, and I've got the power to choose, and if I can choose from a narrative, I explore some scenes, physical action, and why, because I was drawn and interested in this, so drawn most to this to explore the narrative about a forgotten instructor, etc. Or I was interested most in this, which drew me to the practice, was exploring this sequence of action. I'm going to write the own narrative about me. It's going to be personal and connected. In terms of the, really I could hand in a handbook, which is the narrative, first perspective. What do I have to say about Taekwondo? It can be interpreted in multiple ways, and there's a lot of space for people from different positionalities to prosecute it in their own way. And I can be specific and say the lost female forgotten instructor, and then it's up for interpretation. Or I could say the unseen practitioner, very different, because it's about me and my art, and then I'll bring in it my historical perspective on top of its own historical, cultural, and my positionality. And the narrative versus physical won't even matter. I will just make, as Anne Bogart said, a violent choice for the competition. My research question at this stage is looking like, how can Taekwondo be upheld for the 21st century, or what is the creative potential for this practice? Well, I think it is magical and beautiful, and that it can be used for far more than it is being used for. So this is my so what. Why would you make it push it? What's your point of view? Because at the end you get to the pinnacle, and then what's the benefit, and where do I go from there? It's pretty full on and it's pretty intense.